Every murder investigation has a first victim. According to the Bible, humanity's first homicide happened long before cities, kings, or written laws. The killer wasn't a stranger. He was a brother. After Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden, their sons chose different lives. Cain became a farmer, while Abel raised sheep. One day, both presented offerings to God. Abel brought the finest of his flock. Cain offered crops from his field. Scripture says God accepted Abel's offering but rejected Cain's. The reason was never fully explained. Jealousy quickly turned into anger. God warned Cain that sin was waiting at his door and urged him to master it before it controlled him. Cain ignored the warning. Instead, he invited Abel into an open field, away from everyone else. There, Cain attacked his own brother and killed him, committing the first recorded murder in biblical history. When God asked, "Where is your brother Abel?" Cain answered with the words that still echo through history, "Am I my brother's keeper?" According to the Bible, Abel's blood cried out from the ground. Cain was cursed, marked, and condemned to wander the earth as a restless fugitive. One murder changed everything. But if the first killer was a brother, what kind of crimes would emerge once kings, armies, and power entered Israel's story? The first great crime linked to ancient Israel wasn't committed in secret. It unfolded before an entire city. After crossing the Jordan River, the Israelites reached Jericho, a heavily fortified city. Instead of attacking immediately, they marched around its walls once each day for 6 days. On the 7th day, they circled the city 7 times. At the sound of trumpets and a unified shout, the walls collapsed. What followed was devastating. According to the book of Joshua, the Israelite army entered the city under a divine command known as harem, meaning everything devoted to destruction. Men, women, children, livestock, and much of the city were destroyed. Only Rahab, the woman who had hidden Israelite spies, and her family were spared. For centuries, historians and archaeologists have debated what truly happened at Jericho. Some argue the biblical account reflects a historical conquest, while others question whether the city was inhabited at the time described. Regardless of the debate, the story became one of history's most controversial accounts of war and destruction. Victory came with bloodshed. The Promised Land had been entered, but peace did not follow. Instead, violence became part of Israel's earliest history. And the next crime would not come from an enemy outside the camp. It would come from an Israelite whose greed endangered an entire nation. Jericho had fallen. Its walls lay in ruin, and Israel celebrated what seemed like an unstoppable victory. But the next battle would end in humiliation, and the reason was hidden beneath a single man's tent. Before the attack on Jericho, Joshua gave a strict command. No one was to keep the city's treasures. Gold, silver, bronze, and iron were to be dedicated to the Lord, while everything else was placed under harem, a ban that forbade personal plunder. One man ignored the order. His name was Achan, of the tribe of Judah. Inside the ruined city, he secretly took a beautiful Babylonian robe, 200 shekels of silver, and a bar of gold. Returning to the Israelite camp, he buried the stolen items beneath the floor of his tent, convinced no one had seen him. Soon afterward, Israel attacked the ancient Canaanite city of Ai. Expecting another easy victory, Joshua sent only a small force. Instead, the Israelites were driven back, and 36 soldiers were killed. Joshua demanded to know why God had abandoned them. According to the book of Joshua, the answer was simple. Someone had broken the ban. Lots were cast until Achan was identified. He confessed, and the stolen treasure was uncovered exactly where he had hidden it. His secret theft had become a national catastrophe. Then came King David's carefully planned murder. King David is remembered as Israel's greatest ruler. He defeated Goliath, united the tribes, and established Jerusalem as his capital. Yet behind his legendary reputation lies one of the Bible's most calculated crimes. While Israel's army besieged the Ammonite city of Rabbah, David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, he saw Bathsheba bathing from the palace roof. She was the wife of Uriah the Hittite, one of David's most loyal soldiers. David summoned her, and she became pregnant. Determined to hide the affair, David recalled Uriah from the battlefield, hoping he would spend the night with his wife. But Uriah refused, saying he could not enjoy comfort while his fellow soldiers slept in open camps. David's plan had failed, so he devised another. He sent Uriah back to General Joab, carrying a sealed letter without knowing it contained his own death sentence. David ordered Joab to place Uriah where the fighting was fiercest, then withdraw the other soldiers. Joab obeyed. Surrounded by enemy warriors, Uriah was killed. To everyone else, it appeared to be another casualty of war. After a period of mourning, David married Bathsheba, believing the scandal had been buried forever. But according to the biblical account, God sent the prophet Nathan to confront the king. His accusation exposed the truth before the entire court. Israel's greatest king had become a murderer. And next, if David's crime was committed in secret, Queen Jezebel's crimes unfolded in plain sight. Married to King Ahab of Israel, Jezebel became one of the most feared figures in biblical history, accused of corruption, religious persecution, and political murder. One day, Ahab desired a vineyard owned by a man named Naboth. The land stood beside the royal palace, but Naboth refused to sell it because it had belonged to his family for generations under Israelite law. Ahab returned home furious. Jezebel promised to solve the problem. She forged letters in the king's name, ordered local leaders to organize a public fast, and instructed 2 false witnesses to accuse Naboth of cursing God and the king, a crime punishable by death. The plan worked perfectly. Naboth was dragged outside the city and stoned to death. With the owner gone, Ahab seized the vineyard as royal property. According to the Book of Kings, the prophet Elijah confronted Ahab and Jezebel, declaring that both would face divine judgment for innocent blood. Years later, Jehu led a revolt against the royal family. As his forces entered Jezreel, Jezebel appeared at an upstairs window. On Jehu's command, her own servants threw her down. Horses trampled her body before dogs consumed her remains. The woman who mastered political murder had met a violent end, but Israel's darkest betrayal was still approaching. Jerusalem had fallen. In 586 BC, Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the temple, burned the city, and carried thousands of Israelites into exile. Those who remained faced an uncertain future. To restore order, Nebuchadnezzar appointed Gedaliah, son of Achan, as governor over the devastated land of Judah. He encouraged the survivors to rebuild their lives, cultivate the fields, and peacefully accept Babylonian rule. Not everyone agreed. Among the survivors was Ishmael, son of Nethaniah, a member of Judah's former royal family. Driven by political ambition and supported by the king of Ammon, Ishmael secretly planned to eliminate Gedaliah. Several commanders warned Gedaliah about the conspiracy. One even offered to kill Ishmael first. Gedaliah refused, believing the accusations were false and choosing trust over suspicion. It proved fatal. During a shared meal at Mizpah, Ishmael and 10 companions suddenly attacked. Gedaliah was murdered without warning. Babylonian soldiers stationed with him were also killed, along with Judeans who happened to be present. The assassination threw the remaining population into panic. Fearing Babylonian retaliation, many fled to Egypt despite the warnings of the prophet Jeremiah. One political murder destroyed Judah's final chance for stability after Jerusalem's fall. Yet, an even darker story awaited, involving betrayal, violence, and one of the Bible's most disturbing crimes against an innocent woman. Long before Israel had kings, one crime shocked the nation so deeply that it triggered a civil war. The story, recorded in the book of Judges, remains one of the darkest accounts in the entire Bible. A Levite was traveling home with his concubine after persuading her to return with him. As night approached, they stopped in the Benjaminite town of Gibeah and accepted shelter in the home of an elderly man. After darkness fell, a violent mob surrounded the house. They demanded that the Levite be handed over to them. Desperate to protect himself, he pushed his concubine outside instead. The crowd assaulted her throughout the night. At sunrise, she collapsed at the doorway. When the Levite opened the door the next morning, she was lying motionless with her hands on the threshold. According to the biblical account, she had died from the brutal attack. What happened next horrified every tribe of Israel. The Levite placed her body on his donkey, returned home, and cut it into 12 pieces. He sent one piece to each tribe as evidence of the crime and a call for justice. The nation was outraged. The demand to punish the men of Gibeah soon escalated into a devastating civil war against the tribe of Benjamin, leaving thousands dead. Israel's bloodiest internal conflict had only begun. For centuries, Jerusalem stood as the heart of the kingdom of Judah. Its massive walls, royal palace, and Solomon's temple symbolized power, faith, and survival. But in 586 BC, everything changed. King Nebuchadnezzar, second of Babylon, surrounded the city after Judah rebelled against his rule. The siege lasted for months. Food supplies disappeared, disease spread through the streets, and famine became so severe that desperate families struggled simply to stay alive. Finally, Babylonian soldiers breached Jerusalem's walls. King Zedekiah attempted to escape during the night with a small group of soldiers, but they were captured near Jericho. He was brought before Nebuchadnezzar, forced to watch the execution of his sons, and then blinded. Those were the last sights he ever saw before being taken in chains to Babylon. The conquerors burned Solomon's temple, destroyed the royal palace, and reduced much of Jerusalem to ruins. Thousands of survivors were deported into exile, ending the kingdom of Judah. For the Jewish people, it became one of history's greatest national tragedies, remembered for generations as the destruction of the first temple. Yet even after kingdoms collapsed and cities burned, violence refused to disappear. Nearly 600 years later, another fortress overlooking the Dead Sea would become the scene of one final, unforgettable tragedy that continues to divide historians today. More than 6 centuries after Babylon destroyed Jerusalem, the land witnessed another defining moment. This time, the world's greatest power was the Roman Empire. In AD 70, Roman legions captured Jerusalem and destroyed the Second Temple, ending the Great Jewish Revolt. Yet one final group of Jewish rebels, known as the Sicarii, escaped to the mountain fortress of Masada, overlooking the Dead Sea. For nearly 3 years, the fortress remained beyond Roman control. Determined to end the resistance, Governor Flavius Silva ordered thousands of soldiers to surround Masada. Because the cliffs were nearly impossible to climb, the Romans constructed a massive stone and earth ramp, one of the greatest engineering projects of the ancient world. When the siege works were complete, Roman forces finally entered the fortress. According to the 1st century historian, Josephus, they discovered that the defenders had chosen not to surrender. His account has been debated by modern historians, yet Masada became a lasting symbol of courage, determination, and resistance against overwhelming odds. Today, visitors can still walk across the ancient ruins, stand beside the Roman camps, and see the enormous siege ramp that remains almost unchanged after 2,000 years. Masada marked the end of organized Jewish resistance against Rome. But the history of this land was far from over. The final chapter begins in the present day. From the first murder between Cain and Abel to fallen kingdoms, royal conspiracies, political assassinations, and the destruction of Jerusalem, the history of Israel has been shaped by extraordinary events that continue influencing the world today. Empires rose and disappeared. Egyptians, Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, Romans, Ottomans, and the British all ruled this land before the modern state of Israel was established in 1948. Today, millions of people from different religions consider this region sacred. Ancient cities, archaeological discoveries, and biblical landmarks attract visitors from every corner of the world, while historians continue studying the events that unfolded across these hills thousands of years ago. Many questions remain unanswered. Archaeologists still search for evidence connected to famous biblical stories. Scholars continue debating ancient battles, forgotten kingdoms, and the lives of prophets whose words shaped civilizations. Whether viewed through history, archaeology, or faith, one fact remains undeniable. Few places on Earth have influenced human civilization as deeply as Israel. Its story spans thousands of years, filled with remarkable leaders, devastating conflicts, unforgettable victories, heartbreaking tragedies, and mysteries that still inspire debate. If you enjoyed this documentary and want more true stories from history, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and share this video. Until next time, keep exploring the past, because history never truly ends.